You're listening to the Ask Drone U podcast. You ask, we answer your drone questions. Whether you're here to turn your passion into profit or you simply fly for fun, we're a community of learners and teachers who aspire to achieve greatness. We are
Drone U.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another fantastic episode of Ask Drone U. My name is Paul.
And my name is Rob, and yes, we welcome you. Thank you for being with us today. We're ecstatic that you're spending a few minutes of your day with us. Really appreciate it.
Yes, we are very thankful that you listen. Really, thank you very much. Also very thankful for everyone who has left us a review. If you want to leave us a review, it would be good. Today, we're going to be talking about renewing your Part 107. What if you just don't do it? What if you just don't do it? Come on, I know you've been thinking about it. I know you've been thinking about it because people have been asking the question. What if I just don't renew it? I mean, even at the Drone U fly-in, we had someone in who literally is writing the drone law as we may see it in the next year. And he said, so what if I don't renew my license? And the question is really a personal decision. It's really hard to say that right now, but it's true because whether you want to believe it or not, the Part 107 Remote Pilot Certificate has more power and weight over your operations than you may give credence to. Now that being said, if the new micro rule comes out, you probably won't need a license if you're flying something less than 2 kilograms.
You did say if.
We're not there yet, so we're not going to let that come into our argument. But before we go down this rabbit hole just a little too much, which is, I'm sure as you could tell by the beginning of this episode, might just be a fun episode to listen to. Rob is going to attempt to play good cop, and I'm going to attempt to play bad cop.
Wait a minute, I didn't think we were doing that. Oh, well, we'll see how it goes.
No, I'm just kidding. But before we get into it, why don't we go ahead and play today's question, which is brought to you by our friends at ColoradoDroneChargers.com. Look, if you just bought a new Mavic Pro 2, which if you haven't bought a Mavic 2 Pro yet, you're going to want to buy one. Just go to bit.ly/Mavic 2 from DJI. So that's bit.ly/Mavic 2 from DJI. You can also go to bit.ly/DJI drones. Either one will help you in purchasing a new Mavic 2 Pro because you're probably going to want one. Because if you're like me and you travel a lot and you don't like to hike with a lot of heavy gear and you can put this in your little rucksack that you have everything else in already, then you're going to love this thing. Buy Mavic 2 Pro, and if you want a Colorado drone charger to simultaneously charge 4 of your batteries, go to ColoradoDroneChargers.com. They do not have one for a Mavic 2 Pro just yet, but if you're still flying a Phantom or an Inspire or an M600 or an M200, you're going to want one. ColoradoDroneChargers.com.
Great group of folks.
Hi, Paul. My name's Kevin. Hey, I have a quick question for you. Seeing now that the FAA has not been enforcing anybody who's breaking the rules or anything like that, my question is, so what happens if us guys who have the 107 license just blow off the test? What happens then? Is it too risky? Is it, or would there be any penalties? What is our incentive to go back out there and spend the money and to take the test and to do all that over again when we have a lot of people out there just breaking the rules all over the place and nothing's being done to them? Great job on everything else, guys. I do appreciate you guys taking a listen so much. Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate the question. And what I love about your question is that you called in and asked what a lot of people are thinking. And it's just the reality of the deal. So
It sure is.
It's, I don't know that there's an easy answer. As far as what's going to happen, I don't think we can predict what's going to happen. We've not heard of any penalties per se, right, other than what's already on the books.
Which, by the way, to clarify, after doing some research, the other claim of 47 or 46 enforcements cannot be sourced or found to be correct. So we're still at 5 enforcements according to the federal, FOIA.
Freedom of Information Act?
Freedom of Information Act. Wow, I really can't think today. This is bad. This is pathetic. Either way, we still only have 5 enforcements, and I think this is good because this brings up a question that a lot of people are considering. Why spend the time to go renew my license? To be 100% honest with you, I am spending the time and $150. So does that get charged to the business account or my personal account? I think it's my personal.
I think the business will take care of that.
I just had to clarify.
I'm not signing anything.
But $150, you are good to go to fly for 2 years, which if you actually think about it is cheaper than the cost of flying each individual flight itself, even if you're only to do like 30 or 40 flights over the next 2 years, just because of the cost of a battery and how much the cost per battery per flight actually comes down to. So if you really kind of think about this, it's worth it. Just pure financial means. Number 2, it's worth it in a more important sense because let's say, and by the way, I went really deep into this research, like super, super, super deep into this research. And I found 2 things. There's obviously the obvious point that I'll make here in a second, but there's a second deeper point that's more important. If you fly any mission and it's the furtherance of a business, or let's say you fly a mission and it's just hobbyists, or you're saying it's hobbyist, even though we all know it's not freaking hobbyist, okay? You can play stupid all you want, but we all know it ain't gonna work. Affluenza doesn't work anymore. One kid already tried it.
Ouch.
If you had an issue, say you had a crash, let's say you had a propeller fail, let's say the KP index is really high, or you have some crazy hyper-conservative guy who thinks he has every right to privacy in the world, which he doesn't, and throws a water bottle at your drone and takes it out. Any one of those scenarios, if you cause any damage over $500, whatever, you're going to be reporting it to the FAA. If supposedly, let's say you're in a crowd of people, someone's reporting it to the cops are reporting it to the FAA. If you're worried about the FAA, well, you shouldn't be. Chances are you're not worried about the FAA because in all actuality, the FAA doesn't really matter. It's not the FAA who controls, the environment that we fly in. Mm-hmm. They'd like to think that, but it's not them. And I think the FAA needs to hear this question in this show because I think it goes to show the reality of the situation out there.
Yeah.
But that being said, who controls the industry is the insurance companies. So any of those scenarios that I just put out there, you're flying, dude hits your drone with a water bottle, KP index is high, your props fail, you didn't do your firmware upgrade and you have a flyaway. Whatever it is, any one of those things, you're not going to get insured. Let's say you hit someone. Let's say you damage a drone. Let's say you hit a house. Any one of those circumstances, you are not going to be covered. But I just talked to my dad about this, by the way. So there's 2 deeper points of how this can screw you. So point number 1 is that if you are flying without a license, or the homeowner figured out the difference between hobbyist flights and commercial flights and then realized that you didn't have a license, did you know that you are instantaneously able to be sued for negligence? Just because the law says you need a license and you're like, nope. Now
and you could be the best pilot in the world. And made the best decisions ever.
Mm-hmm. And have the cleanest record ever. And now you can be fined for your potential earnings for the next 25 years for negligence.
Wow. For
that one decision. Now, let's say you had the drone damaged. And it's funny because someone's gone to me like, oh, Paul, come on. Come on, look at me. I don't fly that much. I'm just flying. Come on, Paul. Like, I don't really need insurance. I don't have it. Like, I fly a real estate job. I fly a drone-based job. This is one thing I can't stand about drone-based. Lack of vetting pilots. But it's really, really important to understand that even though you may not fly that much, your probability of having a crash goes up every single time you have a flight, if you think about it. Just pure probability standpoint, right? Now, on top of that, let's take all the extrinsic factors that could inhibit your flight in one way or another. The wind, sandstorm, radiometric interference, an angry person with a bottle, a dog that goes after the drone, a tree branch you didn't see, a bird, thank you, branch, thank you, a tree branch you didn't see. There are so many things that can go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even funny. And I think for any human being to say in a reasonable state of mind that they believe that they will not get in a crash is probably the dumbest freaking thing I've ever heard in my life. Because you're taking the belief of your self-ego over the reality that there are so many things that are out of your control. There's really no way to make that statement and be sure every single time. Like it's just not physically possible.
So you're saying it's prudent to renew your license?
Absolutely. Huh. And I think if you don't renew your license, when the FAA does decide to knuck up or buck up, whatever you want, whatever part of the country you're from, you could be in a world of hurt. I mean, I don't want to take the words of my famous friend in investigations, but even Ted said this. He's like, it's not the FAA you have to worry about. When the FAA and the NTSB make their investigations, they just tell you, okay, checkpoint Bravo through Quebec 1 through 9, you didn't do. Have a good day. That's not who you have to worry about.
You're toast.
It's the federal investigators after that, like the FBI or the ATF. Or I don't think the ATF would probably be dealing with this unless you're in explosives. But my point is the FAA, if you know anyone who's in investigations, they're just like the icing on the cake. They're just like, if the cake is you getting in trouble because you hit some little kid in the face, you're going to get, number one, punched in the face by society with a lawsuit. Then you're going to have no way to insure against that lawsuit. So now the lawsuit is completely up to you, whatever you own, and the future of your family. Do you really want to leave the future of your family and the financial status of your entire, everything you've ever built up for because you were unwilling and too lazy to pay $150 for an FAA license? I mean, like, seriously, just sit here and think about that to yourself. $150 and maybe 2 hours of your time, and you want to risk everything.
I don't think they want to risk everything. But so if I'm sitting out there, I'm thinking, okay, I hear you, Paul, and that makes a lot of sense. And no, of course I don't want to do that. But really, like, I'm making a calculated risk. So
it is a calculated risk.
What are the odds? It's kind of like, well, there are a lot of things that I don't even want to bring up because it might increase my odds as I sit here and think about it.
Got to be careful.
Anyways, what are the odds of happening? And so, I mean, I think that's very, very prudent, a very, very prudent perspective to take, and that alone should drive you to renew your license. But I also think that it's a macro perspective that one must take. And a lot of people we have such short-sightedness and such sort of micro perspectives. Frankly, one of the things that I'm just going to give a little peek behind the window here. One of the things that you say sometimes, the questions that we get is they're asking the wrong question.
I do say that. I'm guilty as hell.
Yeah, and
I say that every day. I said that this morning.
I kind of wonder, like, is this...
That's the really nice way of putting it, too, by the way.
Is this the wrong question? I mean, because if you
Typically
think... If you're actually interested in the industry and it being all that it can be and being healthy and vibrant and having the teeth behind it that it needs to have... I think you're going to want to renew to participate in that happening, not fight against it happening by some sort of protest.
Yeah.
Right? And so if something were to change in the future with a new law that suggests you don't need to be licensed if your drone is below 4.5, 5 pounds, whatever it ends up being, then when that time comes, great. Then most of us flying Phantom 4 Pros or whatever don't have to worry about it. But that's not here yet. And so at the risk of sounding like goody two-shoes... I'm all right with that. You do it because you're supposed to and because you care about the industry and you want it to be the best that it can be, and therefore you're part of making it that. Because, yeah, we can sit here and we can talk about all the lack of enforcements, and yes, that's a problem. I'm not disagreeing that that's a problem, but is that really what we should be focused on as the people that are trying to do it right? I don't think it is. And I think almost the more I think about this, I think, God, we spend a lot of freaking time talking about that. Why don't we just go do it the way that we know it should be done, regardless of what the other people are doing? And I guess there are probably practical reasons that you could argue you shouldn't, because if you're licensed and you can't do some certain things that somebody who's not licensed is doing anyways, and I get that. But again, you're just right back into that conversation of doing it the right way and figuring it out. And in the end, you're going to win. So that's my soapbox perspective.
Wow. That was deep.
I don't know how deep it was, but it is my perspective.
I think it's a very good perspective. And by the way, for those of you who are wondering, how do I renew my license? It's very simple. You just go to catstest.com. You can see all the different testing centers in your area. You do not have to book through the phone number. I know a lot of people have been saying, Paul, I've been calling the catstest.com phone number. They're severely understaffed. I called, option number 3 and got sent over to the UAV department. You don't have to call the phone number. You can just call the local testing center and say, my name is Paul, blah, 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 blah. I need to set up a test for Friday morning, and it's the UAS recurrency test. This is not my first UAS or UAV test. This is my second one. It's very important to distinguish that. You should be able to set up a test. The test is 40 questions instead of 60. There are 2 parts to the test that are no longer there, loading and performance, and I believe weather is no longer in there. You need to know your sectionals really well. My advice to you, if you want to make sure and pass this, which now my advice has been working for a significant amount of people, you need to go in and rewatch the airspace section of our Part 107 course. That's with Ted teaching it, not me. I think that's important because Ted's much better than I am when it comes to teaching airspace. Watch the airspace section, go through the quizzes, just make sure you're getting 90% or more on the quizzes, and go take the test. You're going to be fine. I mean, you are going to be fine. So if you're wondering exactly, how do I renew my Part 107 test? Well, for a majority of you that are not Part 61 pilots, you simply call catstest.com or schedule a test at your local testing center. Take the UAS exam, the recurrency exam. Remember, 40 questions, not 60, hour and a half, and pass that test. And keep moving forward, and don't even think about this anymore. Don't spend any more time worrying or any more time even thinking, should I renew my Part 107 license? Yes, for the one sake of you like looking at your family every night before you go to bed.
That's right. And by the way, there is a website, and we'll put a link to it, that gives you a map of the U.S. and all the testing centers, and you have links to each of them and the numbers to call that you're referring to.
Awesome.
So we'll put that in there. That
solves that problem. And don't forget, if you want to buy a new Mavic 2 Pro, check it out. Bit.ly, so bit.ly/DJI drones. Check it out. That's going to do it for us today. My name is Paul.
I'm Rob.
This is Ask Drone You.